taking a shower if I never do.
Yeah, I know. So good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Chad. Good morning, Jeff, on the computer screen.
Yeah,
cool.
we're trying something new. So
Yeah.
welcome. This is the Catholic Dads podcast, and as I said, I'm Chad, and that's
Jeff.
And we're doing a little bit differently today. We're actually streaming live on YouTube, so I don't have to go through and try to upload a file that's matched to no video at all because it's just too hard to pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I do have a banter topic for today.
Excellent.
And the banter topic is every episode of Catholic Dads podcast ever.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
This is our 50th episode.
Land it.
Yes.
Oh, actually,
this is our 50.
Huh?
Yeah, this is 50.
Wow.
So in the hiatus, we missed our year anniversary.
Okay. Yeah.
So the year hiatus happened. I don't know. I think it was in like September.
Right. Yeah.
And it was funny because 4 years prior. So now 5 years prior, it was around September, October that we started when we recorded the initial episodes that we never released.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, we were on a break.
Wow. Congratulations.
Whenever our anniversary truly happened, right? Our birthday happened.
That's a pop culture reference, by the way, that not many will get, but
yeah. But anyway, so I thought it'd be fun to like go through every episode of Catholic Dads ever.
Wow,
and talk about some of the things that we're always saying or doing or whatever. So what springs to mind? I heard you say it the first one.
Right. Well, first off, I'm a little I'm touched and set a little back. That's awesome. It's quite an anniversary. So very cool that you brought that up and thought about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the joke that we already had, if we're going to land this, I was like, gosh, I don't know where that came into the thing, but strikes potentially of an amateur podcast tone as we kept using it over and over again. It became kind of a thing. So I don't think we've done it the last couple, but it seems like that's maybe moved itself out of our, or at least my toolbox. I don't think you ever said. I think that was more of
that was a Jeff thing. That was for sure.
So I'm glad we've moved on for that one. Yeah, memorable topics. The being at the rental house, a lot of the memories around, those, and I think one of them was the blizzard of '76, right, where we were talking about snow and we had made snowmen, and I think that was a January of 2018 that we had like the 3 snow days, and the school was closed for 3 days, and all that. I think we actually had measurable snow precipitation, That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So I was trying to think of, it's more the spirit of what are some of the things that we say or do at every podcast. So I do listen to some of these on the way to work. More often than not, the process, just to give you a background of what's going on behind the scenes, is after I record it on GarageBand, I put it to iTunes, because I have to export it from iTunes into to a template to apply like the music, right, and make it the way that I nerd out to get it.
Nice.
So to do that, and I do these, is that what that's called, post-production? So I get these clips of what we're talking about because I want to put that in the front. So the first thing that, like, if you ever listen to the podcast, you'll hear the music will come on, and then it'll be like us talking. It's like the heart,
a little preview
of what the episode is about. But I don't really know what I want to put there. So what I do is I listen to our raw recording on the way to work, and I will listen for, that's a good one. I'll put that in the front, and I generally try to like have something that you're saying, have something that I'm saying, and obviously tie it all together. So I'm always hearing these things that's like, gosh, there it is again. But it's not just that we're saying certain things, it's doing certain things. So obviously we reference the Catholic Stuff You Should Know podcast like every time. Every time.
Nice.
So that's in every episode. Another thing that we'll do is we'll say that we're going to post something in the show notes, and we never do.
Nice.
It's like, there it is again. We're saying, we'll post that in the show notes, and we never ever post show notes.
That's really cool.
So that's another one. And the third thing that I always see is that it'll be like, don't quote me on this, but so and so said this, and it's never right.
Yeah, nice.
So it's like, we are a bunch of amateurs. It's all good.
That's awesome. They don't quote me on this. Is that's the get out of jail free?
Yeah. Don't quote me on this, but
I'm
I
gonna
think
say
Pope John
something.
Pope John Paul II said that porn doesn't show too much; it shows too little. I was like, no, that's Matt Fradd.
Was it? Oh, bummer. I
Close.
specifically remember that one.
It's close. Matt Fradd,
Yeah,
Pope John Paul II. I mean, close. Wow, they're both Catholic.
that's interesting. There you go.
Anyway, so
Did
yeah,
you find that after the podcast, or was that during the podcast?
No. It was after. It was when I was reading or listening to his book on the porn myth.
Right.
I'm like, oh, it's Matt Fradd.
Huh.
It wasn't
That's
Pope John Paul II. Who knew?
It's funny because that's a widely quoted thought,
Yeah.
right? That I guess Matt Fradd popularized, and then everybody's been bothering his or borrowing his, and thought it was so wise that they just attributed it to John Paul. So.
But don't quote me on that. It might not be Matt Fradd.
Yeah, it might not be. Don't quote me on that. Nice.
So yeah, every episode of the Catholic Dad ever. So that was in honor of our birthday.
Well, now we know. So we'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
And the listeners know never to go to the show notes because
they're not there. They are absolutely not there.
Nice.
No, but today I wanted to talk about the process, and I want to talk about trusting the process. So at work, we have these SOPs, we have these procedures that are in place, we have these processes that are in place. Where if you're going to do a task, you pull the procedure, and follow the steps.
Yep.
And at the end of all of that, you're going to have a successful job, a successful task, a successful test, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In working out, I actually in my garage on my rack, I have written in chalk at the very top, trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
And the process to me for health is, you eat right, and you exercise, you do strength training, you do cardio, and you get sleep, get enough rest, drink water. That's the process to me. And if you do all of that, you will get the results that you want. You'll maintain your fitness levels, or you'll get stronger, or you'll lose weight, or whatever it is. That's the process. Mm-hmm. So my question to you, Jeff, is what is the process for in the faith life as a Catholic dad? What is the process for your family life? What is the process for your marriage? What is the process for your personal faith life?
Mm-hmm.
And that we could say, okay, if I want to grow in holiness in my own personal faith life, this is what I need to do.
Right.
And this is the process. If I want to grow in holiness with my wife, this is the process. If I want to grow in holiness as a dad, or, just to be the best father I can be to my children, this is the process. Mm-hmm. So what would you say is part of the process there?
I think it's an interesting idea to think about it as a process rather than maybe a destination or a goal or not thinking about it at all, right? Yeah. And this gives a framework of looking at it from that standpoint.
So maybe I'm just wired in that way, because I do think I often think that I need this process to make sure I'm on track, mm-hmm. because it's like winging it just maybe isn't going to work.
Well, and
maybe it's a fear. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great message for the vast majority of dads, especially, that would look at, and this was a topic we've had before. That's probably another thing we say on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Or we'll make another
we will
podcast.
Reference other. Well,
but it is. I think all, certainly in the oil field, this is a big movement. It's a big direction. We're all working on SOPs now. We're all procedurizing every task. Everything is getting that checklist. But we don't extend the things and the lessons we learn at work often into our personal lives. So, with the leadership training that we get, the organizational training that we get, the administrative training that we get, at least personally in my life, a lot of times there's like a barrier where I don't bring those lessons back well into the family life. Or if I do, I apply them the wrong way. So continuous improvement or whatever. It's like, well, what, how could we make this more effective? You're not supposed to CIR.
Don't manage me.
Exactly, right. But I think the process of faith life, I think for dads, again, it's going to be unique to each dad and to our personalities and what we're called to do. But to give some time to think about it in terms of a process rather than time management would be, okay, well, I have to do this 3 times a week and I have to do this 2 times a week and I want to make time for this and I want to do, and we get into this like a checklist mode, and we get into, just a check the box mode, turning it into a process and looking at it as a process. Then we start looking at, okay, well, what would be the things what's the stepping stones that get me to the next thing, right? And working out is a perfect analogy that if you turn that onto the faith life, you can, okay, well, of course I'm going to go to mass, every day on Sunday. So that's that's a weekly thing. If I need to increase more prayer, if I need to read a book, if I need to do some of these things, the process would be, sacraments, and how do we build kind of a foundation of grace, or how do we, do those, like we've talked about before, the small steps. It's not a marathon. The easiest way to fail at some project is to just go in and have, crazy high expectations early on and kind of burn out, especially in the faith life. So
Yeah.
the process would be, gosh, I don't pray at all right now. The process would be grabbing a book maybe, and then looking at the week from the standpoint of, let's find some time. Let's do it. Let's commit to 2 weeks. Let's commit to a 4-week kind of, expectation, and then reevaluate at the end of that, and then do something else. So, we just started running, me and a couple of the kiddos early in the morning, and that was the conversation we had. Was I will commit to waking up at 5:30 and waking you up at 5:45, and we'll go out and run. But there's a couple of requirements. Would be you need to get to bed early enough that I can wake you up, because you can't be a cranky zombie. And we're going to do it for 4 weeks. So I'm going to commit to you to change my work schedule, podcast schedule, whatever it is. I'm going to move those things around to commit so that we can do this. But we have to do it for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
At the end of 4 weeks, if it's not working, we'll quit. But let's make sure that we give it a good enough trial that we really know that this is going to work. So I don't know if that kind of fits in your life, but in the prayer life, it would be like, let's try this for long enough to know it's not working.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that's part of the process as well, as you build those gates into things. I don't know if that.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I'm thinking of, like, that's prayer and sacraments. Absolutely, I believe would be trusting the process for the faith life, and that's good. So one of the things that I had mentioned in our text back and forth last night was like, I think I finally found my why of why I'm at least personally doing the podcast and wanting to continue the podcast, and that is, it's easier to. I kind of hate that I do this all the time, but I do apply things that I learned from work, and I apply a work thing to family life. And I don't know if that's always a good thing or not. But one of the things that I learned in my work life is if I'm about to give a presentation, you better give it one time, at least to yourself.
Sure.
Where you're speaking the words out loud.
Yep.
That you're about to speak.
Right.
Because you spend hours creating this slide deck.
Yep.
And you think you know it, and then you go to stand up in front of the people that you're giving it to, and you're like, and you're kind of stumbling. So what I found is, like, if nothing else, just close the door of your office or come home and give the presentation where you're walking through the slides and you're actually saying what you would say.
Yeah. It's important to say it out loud.
Say it out loud because, in your head, it's easy for you to say, okay, well, on this slide, I'm going to talk about this. And this is what I have on the slide. But whenever you're actually there and you're speaking it, it just doesn't come out like it's in your head.
Right.
So it's very important to say it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, this podcast, the topics that we talked about some deep topics. We talked about porn. We talked about having the talk with your kids.
Right.
And, for me, it's easier to actually have those conversations if you've had the conversation before. Even if it's not with them, it's with you.
Yeah, right.
And if nothing else, it's helping me become like a better, parent, I think, because these topics that we talk about, once we talk about it, it's recorded. So I can go back and so number one, I've already said it once. Number two, I can go back and say, what did we talk about? Because this situation came up again. Hey, we already talked about that. So I talked about during the hiatus, we had a, I was like, well, we're hypocrites, or I'm a hypocrite because of this and that. But it's like, what? It's a learning, it's a tool. We can use it. We can go forward and move on from it. And then the third part about it is that, my kids maybe one day will go back and,
Right.
They don't listen to it now. Some of them do. I mean, Evan listened to he commented on the Boy Scouts one. Actually.
Oh, nice.
So I know some of them are listening,
Mhm.
but most don't. And I'm not fooling myself that we have a huge fan base or whatever.
Right.
But one day, maybe it's 10 years from now, the kids will have something to go back and say, that's my dad and Mr. Jeff, and they're talking about these topics. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so it's like planting the seeds for the future
Mhm.
of what might happen. But all that rolls down into, so what's the process for the as a parent
Mhm.
now? So we talked about faith,
Right.
and now we're talking about like the process for the parent, and it kind of rolls into some of the things we talked about on the podcast. Some of the time we've talked about making time, and we talked about I actually implemented some of the. I got a journal.
Nice.
And I started our
Book of
own
Life.
book of life.
Awesome.
It's on the table.
Yep.
So it's cool. It's like doing some of those things. So from a parent perspective, what's your insight on what would the process look like for you on the parent side as a dad?
So I'm doing and we'll definitely do some podcasts on this stuff because it's great material. But I'm reading, reviewing, and leading a book club on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And I think it's Stephen Covey. And I think I mentioned it before. I would say all Catholic dads everywhere should have that book and should read it, and should probably read it once a year because it's chewy, right? And that's one of the feedbacks I'm getting from the book club is like, people pick it up and read it and they're like, oh man, I read like 5 pages and I had to put it down because there was like so much there that I had to think about coming it up. But to keep it short, there's a concept in the book.
Quickly, is it something that would be, because I don't read as much as I listen. I'll listen to books.
The Audible book is my favorite.
Okay.
Because it's actually Stephen Covey, and he passed away in 2012. Actually, which I didn't realize. I read it in high school, right? I've read this book probably 3 or 4 times in my life. The first time I read it in high school back in the mid 90s, right? And I didn't realize he passed away, so that was kind of a sad deal when I picked the book club. But it's in his voice. The Audible is in his voice, and the edition is like the 25th anniversary edition. So there's a really fun, some really fun like question and answers at the end and some stuff. But one of the big concepts in the book is this idea of P and PC. So P is production, and PC is production capability. And you want to put production and production capability in balance in everything. So in a business, production is how many things you're getting out the door. But if you're only focused on how many things you're getting out the door, and you're not doing the regular maintenance on your machines, you're working your people, 24 hours a day without any breaks, 365 days a year, that's production capability. If you're not training your people, if you're not recruiting, if you're not promoting from within, all of those things are PC, and those are longer term goals and visions, right? You have to keep your eye on the PC part of it and keep PC and production in balance, or it falls apart, right? You'll eventually run out of PC and not produce. In the family life, the analogy is he uses the clean room. So we really want our kids to do their chores, clean up after themselves, help around the house. That's all production. We want the clean room.
Yeah.
And as a parent, if we're completely focused on the clean room and we miss the PC part of that, then we end up with fights and bad feelings and arguments and the teenagers that don't want to do anything and all of this kind of stuff because we're not focusing on the PC. The production capability is.
So what is the PC in that
in
scenario?
that context is a loving family, understanding, right? Time, all of the things that we've talked about. It's putting the investment into the child in the long-term sense. And so one of the things they talk about is, let's say you have some sort of big argument about whatever it is, right? That's P, right? We need to do something, have a big argument about it. That's a PC problem. That means that you haven't understood what's going on. Maybe there's something else that's not even related to the argument with your wife or kids at work, or even coworkers, right?
Right.
Somebody's not doing what your expectation was, but we don't take the time to really understand what's going on behind the scenes. We just see the immediate and we jump on it. So trusting the process for me, what resonated, and this is going kind of long, but what resonated was trusting the process as a parent is to really make sure that we're focusing on that production capability. So we're really doing the things in our family life that's looking at, trying to really understand the person and then going about the production through that lens.
So you're saying
that make sense?
Yeah. So it's like you have to build the relationship with your children.
Right.
You have to understand what's going on in their lives and have
You have to appreciate their differences, right? Every kid is different.
Yeah.
Some kids you can just approach and say, hey, go pick that up.
Yeah.
Go over and pick it up because they're happy to serve. Some kids are
Yeah. And that
ask
goes
them-
into like the temperaments and the personalities of each kid.
Yeah. And so the process is oftentimes, there's a great story he's got in the book, but oftentimes as a parent, we're going to go to the immediate, right? Because we're busy and we're just going to go to the immediate, and the immediate is, I'm going to yell at you, I'm going to discipline you, I'm going to, just go right for the jugular, and then we're going to have this big fight, and then neither of us get what we want.
Mhm.
Where the trusting the process would be, let's remember that, there are people too. Let's remember that they have whatever is going on in their lives, and try not to always go for the immediate. Try to do the coaching, try to do the mentoring, and
Yeah.
the other, we really like the Love and Logic guys. Their discipline mindset is don't shield your children from the consequences of their own discipline. So that would be another way of trusting the process.
Consequence of discipline or consequence of their actions?
The consequence of their actions.
Okay, yeah.
So the example there is your teenager has an accident, dents the car, right? Discipline would be, you're grounded, you're this, you're that, blah, 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 right? The Love and Logic would be, oh man, that's a bummer. It happens to everybody, right? I'm going to need you to work through the insurance process. So rather than me being on the phone for 6 hours, I'm going to have it on the speakerphone, but the teenager is going to sit there and have to listen to being on hold, right? And then when we fix the car, if it costs, whatever it costs to get the dent out, it's not my dent. I'm going to need you to pay for that, because in life, when we make mistakes that cost money, it just doesn't show up, right? So you owe me $800. What are we going to do to put a plan together in order to work that off, right? There's no yelling, there's no screaming, but you're working on that production capability. You're changing the character of the person to see what the consequences are, rather than, I'm just going to be mad at dad. I can't believe you grounded me. It happens to everybody, right?
Right.
Yeah. It was a simple mistake, right? So that, in terms of the process for family and marriage, that would be where I would go with that, right? What's the process? The process is not focusing on the immediate, right? I'm super mad at my wife because of whatever. I'm just going to be grouchy, and I'm not going to do whatever she wanted me to do today. That's not trusting. The process is, I make mistakes, she makes mistakes. We want to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary together someday. So what do I need to do today to just make sure that this goes back on track, that goes back the way it is? I don't know if that's
no, that's good. Yeah. And so I did want to go, to focus on then the marriage part. So trusting the process in marriage, because, sometimes it is, I think with our spouses, it could be even more difficult because they're the person that knows us the best, that is, hard as it kind of seems, because we get wrapped up in our own little worlds, right? We're away from the family during the workday, and so we don't really see as much of them as we would want to, but they do. They are the ones that know us the best. And whenever you have somebody that you're that close to, obviously those are the most intense relationships that we have in our lives. So when things don't go our way, and you might not think that it's things are like you just mentioned earlier, it's like I'm mad because of this or that. What does trusting the process in marriage look like? That you say, okay, you take a step back. This is not maybe what it seems. What would you say is trusting the process with marriage specific?
So at the highest level, trusting the process is Catholic dads who don't believe in divorce. So that's it. The ultimate, if you wanted to go to the highest level of trusting the process is, this is a sacrament. God will give us the grace to make this through. Divorce is not an option. That never factors into the conversation, no matter how bad the situation is, no matter how, granted there's, to take that too wrong, there's certainly reasons the Catholic Church says, abuse and drug use and all that, certainly that's not what we're talking about. But the day-to-day fights, the day-to-day frustrations, if you let those build up over time, that's really the poison that damages those relationships. So trusting the process is, we're in this together forever. So does this daily thing that happened in that context, is that really, do I have to make go to war over this, or can we, move it through? The other thought, and something that I'm really working on, it kind of came around maybe during Lent, but wasn't initially something that I was going to work on during Lent, was trusting, how should I phrase this? So trusting the process is, when my wife asks for something, like don't have that kind of like personal selfish whatever. Why are you? Sorry, left your mouth. The don't if somebody is asking for something that sounds really terrible the way that I'm phrasing it. I don't know.
I know exactly where you're going.
If somebody asks you to do that and do it later.
Yeah, because and also if I could just interject real quick, is I recognize that spills over to the family. If your wife asks you that, hey,
Absolutely.
I need this to be done or whatever, and you sit down and you don't do it immediately,
Exactly.
your kids will observe that.
That's right.
And be like, okay. And so whenever we ask them to do something and they don't do it immediately,
right,
we get mad at them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, well, they're probably just mirroring us.
Well, and I think so. There are two other thoughts on that. One was an example of Erin's she had like 7 doctor's appointments this week. Nothing, super serious, but just that kind of like annual. It was her birthday, so all of the annual things came up. And so one of the appointments, it was actually 4 appointments that were all related. And we hadn't heard from the doctor. We went and got the checkup, and then